I'd love to kick us off by introducing our wonderful speakers and special guests who are joining us today. We have the pleasure of hosting Kate Adams. Hi, Kate.
Hey there. How are you?
Good,
it's a pleasure
good.
to be here.
Of course. Thanks for joining us. And Nick Bennett today. So Kate, hi, Nick.
Hey.
Great. Thanks so much for joining us. So Kate is the Vice President of Marketing at Drift. She is by far one of the best marketing and demand generation executives in our startup ecosystem here and has nearly 2 decades of experience across SmartBear, WeSpire, Luvo, and many other companies even before her time at Drift. And Nick Bennett is the Director of Field Marketing at Logs.io. He's also the founding member of Rev Genius, associate at Revenue Collective, and a core partner at _VC, working alongside a fantastic community of demand generation leaders and one of our portfolio companies. So thanks to both of you for joining us today as we kick off December together. And as we all know, 2020 has thrown many curveballs at us, to say the least. And as we all try to recover from the chaos that was 2020, I'm so excited to hear your thoughts on how we can set ourselves up for success next year in 2021. So throughout the event, for the audience, I just want to let you know, feel free to leave questions or comments using the text Q&A section below, but we'll also open up for live in-person questions using video Q&A towards the end as well. So to get us going, let's start with, what are each of your companies doing today in terms of leveraging virtual events for demand generation in this COVID season? Nick, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're leveraging a bunch of different things right now, from a mixture of obviously webinars or roundtables, but we also just launched our first ever user conference, happened a couple of weeks ago. So it's things that we've been trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. And honestly, it's a learning process. Like, we're still trying to figure it out. I think everyone's still trying to figure it out too. And I think being able to try different types of activities and things that, like, how do you thrive in a virtual world when everyone's doing the same exact thing? And like, that's what you have to figure out. Like, maybe it's a gamification piece of it. Like, maybe it's like VIP parties, things. Maybe we actually, for our user conference, we had someone do a custom Lego design, and it was all like done live, and like it was just super cool for our like ICP, which is engineers and developers. Like they love that type of thing. So I think it's really just trying to figure out and like double down. But I think it's important to know that events aren't dead, and I think it's important to just figure out how to like leverage them correctly.
Yeah, that's very interesting. What about you, Kate? What's happening at Drift?
Yeah, I can't reiterate what Nick said enough. Events are definitely not dead. They are very much alive and well. And in fact, for us, doing better than they ever have before. So within a COVID environment, in April, we launched and hosted our largest ever company event, in person or virtual, which was amazing. And so we've really doubled down. We've doubled down on a couple things. Definitely doubled down on our own events. So we had Hypergrowth, which was an in-person event, which we did 3 times in 2019, which was like London, San Francisco, and Boston. And those were amazing events for us. And so when COVID hit and we had to cancel those, we were really concerned, right? And sad, quite frankly. But what we did was realize it was really, these events were all about community, and people need community and connection now more than ever before, right?
Totally.
Luckily, I have this amazing background here, but right now I'm in my basement, and I'm in my basement every day by myself, right? And so having human connections and being able to have conversations with people is now more important than ever. And I think Nick hit it on the head too. I just reiterate there. It's like, don't go try to take your analog event or what you did in person and make it digital. That is not what we did for Hypergrowth. We completely reinvented it and said, no, we're going to go this way with partners. We're going to go this way. We're going to have partners involved in terms of it's not just our event. It's not just a Drift event. It's this whole ecosystem partner. And we're going to surround our community with education that they need because they have problems that they had no idea 30 days ago that they were about to have. And so we're going to provide education and value for zero. And that's really David Cancel, one of our founder and CEO, his whole hypothesis around marketing just in general. And it's what we kind of live by at Drift, which is give. And eventually the get will come to you. You don't have to work so hard for it. You just give it. So that's our take on it.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful how creative both of you have been and just adapting to the current environment in creative ways overall. So one thing that's really interesting about virtual events is probably that it's actually way cheaper and the reach of people can be much broader. And one question that seems to be on a lot of people's minds as we enter 2021 marketing strategy and budget planning sessions right now, like, have you tried measuring the return on investment for any of your events in the past and like virtual events more recently?
I can kick it off there.
Sure.
Yeah. So we use Visible, which is an Adobe product. It's a multi-touch attribution model. So actually, it's really hard to find something we don't measure. So yes, we absolutely measure the ROI of all our events, and the ROI of those has gone up really tremendously, a ton. When you say events are cheaper, one thing I would just give pause to there is like, yes, you're not going to spend time on space. You're not going to spend money on space, and you're not going to spend money on meals, but don't think that you're not going to have to up your game. So we've had to up the caliber of the speakers that we drive, right? Our next Rev Growth, we have Nick Tran, the head of global marketing for TikTok, right? We have Lindsay, the editor-in-chief of Teen Magazine, all these people. So reinvest, right? Don't let your CFO say like, okay, you just need the same dollars minus the hotel, minus the space, minus the meals, all of that stuff, right? No, you have to reinvent. And so like, you have to think about how much is that DJ battle going to cost you that you're going to put on during the break? How much is that yoga instructor going to cost you that you're going to put on during that break when you do reinvent, right? Yeah. And don't take meals off the table, right? You can deliver Uber Eats gift cards. You can deliver actual meals to people's doors. Like, that is part of the experience. And I'll tell you, like, I'd be really excited to get a meal from somebody at this point because I'm over this Thanksgiving leftover game right now. But
yeah, totally. That's super interesting and really good reminders. How about you, Nick?
Yeah, so I think Kate did really well. And so it's actually, I'm going through my budget kind of planning process right now. And I actually am doubling my budget for like field marketing and events for next year, just because of like the ROI that we've seen from them. And it's kind of like, it's you still have to figure out, and like, so we're leveraging, partners. For us, we don't use an attribution tool right now. I've used Visible in the past, so we're just looking at first touch, last touch. I know we can get better than that. I've only been here for about like 3 months, so it's on my list to get to. But outside of that, it's just, for us, contribution, or specifically for field marketing, contribution to pipeline, it is one of our biggest things. And so both from an influence perspective as well as a source perspective, and like we look at a lot of that. We actually just kicked off AWS reInvent this week, and so we're doing this cool like t-shirt type giveaway thing, but we're leveraging gamification with it. We've already got like 45 meetings booked in a day and a half using Drift actually. So it's been awesome, and it's just like trying to figure out other ways that you can stand out and measure that. And if you can go to like your leadership team as well as your executive team and show that like you are providing the actual like ROI that's coming from these, like they'll give you as much money as they physically can. Like, you just don't be afraid to ask for it. Yeah,
totally. And I think you guys are both being very intentional about the budget that you're setting aside for events, but also gathering the data. I love that obsession around data, and that's actually one of the key benefits, I think, about virtual events, because some of these technologies, like the platform that we're on right now, can integrate with the Visibles of the world, with your CRMs of the world, and actually track the attribution and like leads afterwards as well. And I think those are some of the things that helps you get the data to actually do the attribution that you need and measure the ROI coming out of events. So I think that's really powerful, and hopefully we can actually lean on that more with sort of this like virtual event landscape overall. So moving on to the next topic here, I know you guys have already both mentioned some very large scale user summits and major conferences that you've hosted. And it's clear that folks have tried all kinds of things in this season, like whether it's different types of events for demand generation, from large scale summits, webinars, smaller curated events that are much more intimate and have like a differentiated experience. From all the things that you've tried, what's been working best for you, and what are the things that you're hoping to do more of heading into 2021? And either of you can take it first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to start. So for us, we're also in the process of launching ABM, and so building up from scratch. And so for us, very personalized and targeted events. If you think like the wine events that are out there, the happy hours, like the virtual things, like virtual escape rooms, things like that. Play to like your target audience as well, and see like what like those people really would like. And being able to do things like that have been really successful. But we've also put together we're putting together like a roadshow based on our user conference that is going to kind of switch up themes quarterly, and like gamification is going to play a huge piece of that for us, because we realized that's something that people really enjoy. And the whole like, you can also take the event piece of it and move it into like deal acceleration as well, and being able to use that to push people further down the funnel. I'm kind of working on those types of things and just trying to figure out how you can better stand out. But then, it's interesting because it's like, I always have the question, what will be the next virtual wine tasting? Like, that was a big thing, and like everyone was all over it, and like now everyone knows, what's the next like version of that? And whoever can figure that out first will have success, I think.
Interesting. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I would build off that. I think, Nick, I'm interested in what the next virtual wine tasting is. Although I'll say the large scale events of like example of what we're doing with Rev Growth, that has been very successful for us, but also doubling down on getting the right like ideal customer profile and the right personas in the room of like, and we wrote a book, right, that was called This Won't Scale. And like, this is one of those things that people are like, well, I'm not going to bring 20 people together. Like, that's not scalable. I got a whole sales team to feed. Like, no, you need to do that, because that's been one of the most successful events that we are now doing them 2 times a month. And yet, Nick, they have wine in them, right? But I think that we're going to experiment with a bunch of different elements moving forward. But I think it's also because of that point of the connection that people want. And also, I don't think that these are going away. I'm going to make a big, bold prediction. I don't think they're going away, even when the entire world is vaccinated. And because people are loving these, I'm loving these. My network over the last 8 months has grown exponentially more than it would have if we were not in a world health crisis. And I'll tell you why. It's because I can host these events and walk down the stairs and in my basement and host it and build all these connections, have an awesome conversation with 29 different marketers, and then be upstairs to put my son to bed, right? In an instant. And so, whereas like if that were in a normal world, right, I'd be sitting at the office waiting around until 6 or 7 to start it. Then I don't get done until 9, and I'm not home until 10, and I haven't seen my kids since 6:30 in the morning, right? Yeah. Like, I think people are finding value in that environment, and I think it's been a big positive as a result.
No, that I think totally resonates. And it's actually the same for me. As an investor, I often go to many different conferences and sometimes have to fly. So like all the travel time you've spent like on the road, getting to the conferences and hotels, like I think there's way more like wider and like meaningful engagements that can happen in smaller chunks too. You don't have to do everything in Las Vegas for 3 days. Like it's like ongoing engagements throughout the year. And you can still get on your bike and work out afterwards. And I think there's like a lot of those, like even everybody fitting in their family life and work life and still broadening their network in this way is very powerful and across time zones and across different countries. So
it's so funny that you talk about the workout. I literally hosted an event, and one of the folks on there was like, "I'm not turning my camera on because I'm on my exercise bike, but I didn't want to miss this event." And
that's awesome.
He was doing it at the same time, and it's amazing, right? And that's not weird, right? Because when you're exercising, you're listening to or at least I am, a podcast, an Audible, or whatever at the same time. So why not be able to just get on a call with some folks?
Sure. Maybe some folks today on this are actually on their Peloton bikes or whatever. No, but that's super interesting. And the main takeaway that actually I'm hearing is like large scale events are important, but actually some of these smaller curated events seems to be the ones that actually lead to closer lead generation and closing deals coming out of them. So I think that intimate, personalized touch point is something that we shouldn't forget as we go into next year. The big splash marketing events can be helpful, but balancing it and with a portfolio of different types of events as a main takeaway for the audience. Okay, so the next question, I think marketing teams actually can often have the reputation that they kind of are in their own world doing their own thing in isolation. I think there's a huge opportunity to better collaborate with sales teams to not only prioritize, but actually like work very closely together in targeting leads before and during and after events. And that's, I think, going to be possible in ways that weren't even imaginable before through technology as well, given the platforms that we're using and tools that we're using to plan the events before and also follow up after the events. I'm curious to hear ways that you guys are currently collaborating with sales teams and or think you can do more of in the future.
I think I can kick it off. So one, we always, we had a new vice president of sales productivity join our organization, and he helped me a ton with the grade of like sales enablement, right? And folks like me focused on demand gen are constantly trying to like jump up and down to the sales team being like, hey, look at this. Hey, look at that. Like, look, you can do this and do that. And he grounded me in something that I am talking to our team about every day is like, the only thing a salesperson cares about is how is this going to help me make money? And how do I use this to help me make money? Right? And so in that regard, like that is the lens through which we talk about everything. And so when we talk about, hey, why do you want to promote rev growth to the people that you are having meetings with? Because right now I know that we have 1.2 million ARR associated back to that event, right? Yeah. People who go to these events get educated, they feel the love, they enjoy the experience, you win their hearts and minds. Right. And so that's really been integral for us to think through that. The other thing is we did make a misstep last month, and I think it's because we're in this different like virtual event world, right? And so we didn't really think through like, oh, how does that mean we pivot on lead scoring and like we sponsor these events and we get these giant buckets of leads back in and we pour them into the system, and it's like, okay, but in reality, if it were an in-person event, I wouldn't have gotten the entire list. I would only get the list of people that stopped by my booth or that I had or went to our session or whatever. I think in a virtual environment, so you kind of hit on it earlier, where it was where these platforms now give you such more granular data. Yes. So instead of putting in the whole buckets, what we're doing is thinking about like, okay, only the people that attended our session, only the people who stopped by our booth, only the people who consumed content within one of the sessions that we had content, only the people who consumed our content from the resources hub or section that was within that. They only had an interaction with us and really isolating there and really digging in so that we're really only giving them the best at bats possible from sales in order to earn some of that trust back. And I think so we've changed a little bit on that side And we just did that recently, but
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I would kind of add to that. I mean, let's be honest. MQLs don't make salespeople money. Like, you need to want to speak their language as well. And I think it's something that you can measure. But when you're talking to sales, you need to talk about what's going to make them money. And like Kate nailed it. Like, that's all they care about at the end of the day. Is this gonna like help me make club, or is this gonna help me crush my quota for the quarter? And like, if you can relate to them, and also be a strategic advisor to them, like, don't be afraid to say no. Like, you can't just like, you see this with some sales teams, like they just think, field marketing, like all you do is events. Yeah, like go plan this for me, go plan this for me. But like, there's so much more to it, and being able to work as a strategic partner to them is so much more important. And I mean, we're kind of in the same boat as well. Like, take AWS reInvent. We're doing it right now. There's 350,000 people that are going to it because it's free this year. And so like what we've done in the past, and we've also done a misstep where I would pass all of the leads that came through regardless of, they attended speaking sessions, they just stopped by our landing page, whatever. And the SDRs were so overwhelmed that like most of them were just, they weren't great leads. And so now we have a lot more strategic plan in place, process in place. Our lead scoring's better, but we had to go through some rough times to basically get to that point. But I think that we're in a good point now where we're not only cherry picking, but we're very strategic about the follow-ups and the ads that we're serving. And we also use an intent tool to help with a lot of those in the decision and purchase stage that are basically trying to push forward. Yeah,
that's awesome. So I think to kind of capture our thoughts before events, like collaboration with sales teams, even targeting the ACPs, like, and folks that are honestly even their pipelines that they're trying to get to, like engaging them through events and helping them proactively. And then I've actually started hearing sales teams joining events and interacting live during the events if they get alerted that one of their target customers has joined an event, so that you can interact in the chat and like actually go into a side room, breakout room, and do more active engagement when you show like your target customers are actually now at my event. So this is your opportunity to shine, and you give sales team the opportunity to actually see and engage during events after as well. But I think the money is actually in the post-event of all the people who joined, and like with all the extra granular data that Kate, you mentioned, the lead scoring and active collaboration. I almost envision like a workflow that you need to have coming out of events, all the attendee data that you score alongside sales teams in a very systematic approach, and actually have that all integrated into your CRM and sort of automated post-event engagement strategy for all the leads that you generated, so that then you can actually show from target in the pipeline, and as you get closer to closing deals, like you can actually see how your events actually played a role in helping sales teams like get to those customers and close the deals, and therefore make money. So I think all of those are really amazing to hear. So I think actually I want to take a moment to take a look at the polls, because we actually asked folks where do they think when in-person events come back. I'm going to share it really quickly. What percentage of your events will be virtual? And I don't think everyone saw this, so a part of the audience engaged, it looks like 56% is saying almost everything will be hybrid, 20%, more than 50%, and folks are even voting live right now as we speak. Do you generally agree with this assessment? And what do you think will be the breakdown of in-person versus virtual if and when the vaccine comes out and we actually get back to normal?
Go ahead, Nick.
These numbers are actually pretty aligned to what I thought they would be. And so kind of like Kate said, like when we get back to normal, whatever that is, like it will never be what it used to be pre-COVID. Like you can do so much more through a virtual world that like I think it will always be hybrid. personally, what I think the numbers will be is about like 60 to 70% will still be virtual or hybrid, and then the other piece will still be in person. But I think on demand is going to play a huge piece in these numbers to be able to deliver this content.
Yeah.
I think the hybrid assertion is really interesting. I think that people will say that until they get the quotes on how much the union labor cost is to stream things live, because it is no joke unless those folks change their model, right? Change their business model, and that might be the case. But I would say I think it's about 50-50. I would say like virtual to in person is the mix. You know, when we were prepping this, my assertion was like, I am kind of so relieved about that virtual events are doing so well, and that I don't have to go to all of the trade shows. This is definitely not the case at Drift, but I have been at different organizations where I have had to spend large sums of my marketing budget on a specific event because the CEO said so, right? And he really wanted to be there because there was going to be a competitor there, or because there was some acquisition target there, and he wanted to demonstrate our presence and make us look bigger, right? In a non-virtual or in a real life scenario. And I think to some extent, and all the marketers I'm talking to right now are saying, like, to some extent, there's an element of trade show of that, like 50% of it, it's like that old adage about advertising. 50% of my trade show budget is ineffective, but I don't know which 50%, so I just keep it all on, right? And so, and I think that this has been a big relief. I don't see a world coming back outside of this scenario where it's like people are scrambling to get a booth at this place, that place, and everywhere else. Like I think that at the end of the day, my prediction when we went into this is that we will come out of this much better, 10x the marketers and salespeople that we were walking into it. And you know, seeing it's a small light at the end of the tunnel right now, but I think it's getting bigger and bigger by the day. But like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, like I couldn't agree more. Like I think people have done incredible things in this time.
Interesting. So kind of with sort of those statistics of the mix of in-person and virtual or hybrid events that we're probably going to see somewhere starting spring or next summer in 2021, what are the things that are top of mind for you as you figure out your event marketing strategy next year? And one related question that I'll throw in here from Marina was, like, how are you thinking about sponsor booths at events? Is it working for Drift and Logs.io? It's a question that seems like a lot of folks are trying to figure out.
So, sorry.
Go ahead.
So I would say the biggest thing in terms of how we're planning for calendar year 2021 or fiscal year 22, depending on what system you're on, is that everything's in pencil and we're not contracting anything. So I don't care, you know, if I have learned anything in this environment, it's that nothing is permanent. And so we're not contracting anything in person right now. We're definitely contracting virtual things, but we're not contracting anything as it relates to in person right now. In fact, from our own office environment, the last update that we've given our own employees is that they shouldn't even think about coming back until June of 2021. And when they do, it won't be in the same way that we were back before. So as it relates to anything in person, not banking on anything right now, but we are definitely moving forward with virtual. And then if the year comes out and in Q4 of next year, we find out, we can do something in person, or we can add an in-person element to that, we can go add that in, but certainly not planning on it. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I would agree. We're also not planning anything in person, and it's interesting. So we're an Israeli company, and so Israel's like they're all in the office. Like it's just everyone. We actually had an all hands last week, and like everyone was in there, like next to each other, no issues, and it's very different for the Boston office. We also don't plan on going back for a while. But it's just something where we've seen like the virtual have success where like, you know, maybe our conference next October, maybe if we get to June or July, maybe we can put it in person, but we have no plans on doing so currently.
Interesting.
But I think there was a question around sponsored booths. I think virtual booths, I would not, I am not signing up for anything because of the virtual booth component in the sponsorship package. I just think that nobody's nailed that yet. There hasn't been an event vendor that has nailed that experience or made it really interesting or made it really satisfying for anyone. And if it was the free t-shirts and the swag and the pens, like there's no swag and pens and t-shirts in a virtual booth environment. So none of that. I get into events for the match on our ideal customer profile of how many of those folks will be there and for the speaking opportunities that we get. But outside of that, virtual booth is not the reason why I'm signing up for anything.
Yeah,
I don't know.
same.
What have you found, Nick?
I was going to say it's the same. So actually, when I got to Logs, all they did was 100% trade shows, which I've never been a huge fan of trade shows anyways because of the ROI from them. But when you throw in the virtual component of it, and I looked at the results from like the ones that we did do, it wasn't great. And it was just like, that was kind of like the first thing that I needed to fix and try to get out of as many contracts as possible throughout the rest of the year. But it's just, you know, it's tough because it's like, you got to figure out how to drive people to a virtual booth, which is really just your landing page. And then you got to make it so that the content is compelling enough that they want to sit there and convert to a lead, fill out a form. Maybe it's a survey, whatever. Half the time they just want like whatever free sign up or giveaway that you're doing. And it really results in nothing. But yeah, I would agree with Kate. Like the amount that people are still charging, I can tell you like for reInvent, even knowing it's virtual, it's not a cheap conference to still do. Like we invested a lot of money into it. And I don't personally know if we'll get everything out of it that we hope so.
So another question that's kind of related to planning for next year is actually what technologies to leverage to plan, invite folks, and actually host events on. Do you guys have the landscape is rapidly evolving in terms of these tools and sort of technologies overall. Are there any favorite ones that you guys are exploring or using?
I mean, personally, for me, I've been just trying to try out different ones. I mean, we've used Zoom for a lot of things. When you're doing like the smaller type things, I've just used Zoom. It's easy. You can do what you need to do, but there's so many platforms that are out there now. And that was another whole thing for me. Like, you know, by this time next year, it's going to, you know, companies are going to end up like buying other companies. And obviously Hopin's another big one that's out there, and more start to evolve every day, you know, on 24. And I've used pretty much every single one of them in the past, but I don't know if I have a favorite. I use whatever has the best capabilities for what I need for that specific event.
We're really lucky to have On24 as a partner of ours. And so that's what we've been running Rev Growth on. I think the innovation curve as it relates to event software, we are just starting to hit it. I don't know if everybody saw it, but Twilio did a study on it was like a COVID-19 state of marketing report where they surveyed like 2,500 enterprise marketers and asked them like, how is digital transformation, like how much digital transformation have you gone through in the last 6 months? And at that point, we were 6 months into it. And their estimate was 6 years. Forrester and Gartner are talking about like, they have it at 10. Having lived, so just think through that for a minute. Like as a marketer, that we have lived through a world health crisis. If you're in the U.S. in an insane political environment, right? As well as all of the social/gender movements that we've all gone through over this period of time. But not only that, like we've also then changed our entire working environment, all been working from home, but have accelerated the work that we've done we've lived 6 years and 6 months. Like, I don't know about you, but the holidays are calling, like my couch is calling my name for a good rest after that. But I think the event space, though, bringing that back, the event space is just starting to hit their innovation curve, because I think what happened to them is they got this blizzard of business of like, I got to take my analog event to digital and hurry up and help me do this. And so then that meant they just had to invest in current platform. And I think now people are just starting to innovate on that platform around virtual events for the future. So I'm really excited to see what more folks come out with. I agree with Nick. We've been operating our smaller events on Zoom, but I think that there's a ton of really exciting stuff. Bright Cove has some really exciting stuff. This platform is really interesting. It's my first time on here. So yeah, I'm excited by what's coming out for sure.
Yeah. No, sorry, go ahead, Nick.
Oh, sorry. I was going to add one piece to it. The platforms that figure out how to tie revenue to the events that you can do, I think will be the ones that succeed and like can make it more of a unified platform where you can show the ROI specifically without having to, run reports in Salesforce or whatever, you're using. It's just one platform that can do it all. And I think, hopefully you see more innovation from these other companies that are starting to do things like that as well. I think it will only benefit all of the marketers that are out there.
Yeah. No, I think that's really interesting that you say that, because in many ways, I personally am biased, and I actually chose this platform as one to host this event, but also actually invest in, because that's exactly the functionality with deep backend integrations to enable that ROI measurement and actually empowering marketers to engage and interact and collaborate with sales teams. That's actually very powerful. And I see that ultimately as the future of virtual events. So hopefully folks actually can check out more about Goldcast specifically, this event platform, but also I'm sure there will be ongoing conversations about all the sets of tools that you're going to use to make the best virtual events possible in the coming years. So there's actually, and one of the other favorite functions is this is actually way more interactive. You can upvote and heart and actually engage in a more interactive way. So let me actually take a moment to give folks an opportunity to open up and ask video Q&A questions. So for the audience, if you want to ask a question live, feel free to use the video Q&A section at the bottom, and we can accept you to come up and ask questions overall. Otherwise, sure, here we go.
Hey, hi. Thanks a lot for doing this.
Of course. Hi, Kishore.
I had one quick question about the events, especially the post-event follow-up. Right? So I was wondering if there is a way to personalize the message you send to prospects and customers who are there in the event, instead of having a standard on-demand webinar link of sorts. Just wondering how do you guys strategize the event follow-ups and try to personalize for prospects and customers?
Yeah, so I think that's a huge opportunity, specifically for you, Kishore. But that is an astronomical opportunity to be able to pass all of that data into whatever object you're passing into Salesforce, around what question did this person ask, what sessions did this person attend, what polls did they fill out for further qualification, and then also to add those as attributes potentially on the leader contact record in the CRM. I think that's a huge opportunity. I think right now we're doing it, we pass this person registered and they attended and these are the sessions that they attended. But then I've got to enable the sales team kind of off in another way around and here's what the session talked about, and here's how to follow up, and here's the right questions to ask around all of those things, right? To make that a no-brainer on the sales side would be because only my best reps are really doing the work on that. Otherwise, no offense to SDRs, I grew the SDR team from 4 to 20 at Drift, but they are amazing, but they are creatures of habit, right? It's they want, you tell them okay, first you go here, you click this button, then you do this. There's not a lot of critical thinking. It's a lot of muscle memory. It's just boom, 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 boom. So the more you can take that out and customize that, whether it's an integration with Outreach or something, or SalesLoft or et cetera, the more powerful I think that becomes.
Yeah, and I would add to that as well. I think it's also, it's so important for the SDR team, like, so that they just don't throw someone into a cadence that isn't personalized. Like, because we do the same thing. It's a very manual process of like, if we do have notes or specific, things, we do a lot of like the back end stuff, but to automate that process would make my life so much easier, and make like, just everyone's lives so much easier, because at the end of the day, like kind of Kate said, the SDRs, like they're creatures of habit. Like, they'll throw someone into a cadence and it may not be as personalized and touch on like the specific points from that specific event. And that's just kind of like a loss to me. Like, that's like so much opportunity that could be there. That like, if automation is possible, like it would be huge.
Great.
Thanks.
Awesome. Of course. Thanks, Kishore. Shashank, you're next up.
Hey, thanks for having me. I think I'd love to hear, so I'm an attendee. Most of the times I don't organize anything, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you think of networking going forward. I think that's been what I've missed the most, because I've had like a bunch of conferences this year that are super underwhelming. And props to them for trying out different things. Like, I've seen like everything ranging from Zoom breakouts to almost Tinder style swipes where you can choose who you want to network with and stuff. So it's interesting, but I'd love to just hear like your thoughts on like how you see that evolve. I'm also like, I work in the gaming industry, so I also kind of feel like this is a problem that has been solved in gaming. For example, like if you look at Fortnite, I'd say they've kind of solved for it. It's harder for folks who haven't played games to get used to the platform. But I feel like there's lots of stuff there around, like if you've seen the Travis Scott concert, because I think that's the most popular one that's happened in that space.
Interesting.
But I'd love to just hear your thoughts, I guess. Like, which platforms are you loving for that? Where do you see that going?
I don't love any of the platforms for it. Nick was talking about the platform that wins will be tied to revenue. I agree with that because 100%, but I think another key component in a place to win is the networking component. And I am fortunate enough to be, so not only I speak on things, I guess, but I get to go and just talk at other people's more intimate events to learn from my peers. And there's lots of people doing some interesting stuff around Slack right now. The concern I have around Slack is like, then you open that environment up and you are also opening up your entire customer base to your potential competitors or prospects. And so like, that can become a really big problem, right? Yeah. I don't think anybody has done it well, at least not that I've seen, and I've been in market. I think a key component of the winning platform will definitely have that component tied in. And Shashank, that was really interesting because I think you're right. Like that is where the folks that are, and Kishore, who was on before, should take the learning from Shashank here. I mean, that's where if I'm in virtual events, I'm going to go look at what they're doing in gaming and emulate that. But nobody in the virtual event space, in my opinion, has mastered the networking component.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And it's just like, I've also attended a bunch of conferences, just with other ones with marketers, and like, just tried to see what else is out there. And like, that's the one piece that I always feel like underwhelmed about, where it's just like, I miss being able to go out and like talk to other people. And like, yeah, you could do like, there's like icebreakers and you can hop on and like, we could have a video chat, but I haven't seen anything that's like blown my mind yet.
Interesting. Does that help, Shashank, or anything else on your mind? Okay. Well, thanks for joining us today. So I think there are a couple other questions that we never got to in the chat also while we wait for anyone else to join. One of the things that's very tactical that I actually am curious about thinking about for your user conferences that you're planning, and as you budget, do you budget for two separate event teams, like one focused on in-person and one for virtual experiences, or is the experience for both? And like, how are you actually tactically managing even team capacity and tool sets around enabling both types next year?
Yeah, for us, we're just doing it all under one team. So basically, field marketing is owning everything. Both our major events, any actual like in region. If we're doing that, we're also owning ABM. So we have a lot on our plate, but we don't plan to kind of break it out at all. Even though we do heavy amount of trade shows, we still feel that field marketing can own the majority of it. And we'll see how it goes. We'll at least that's our plan so far.
Okay.
Yeah, ours is the same. So we have one person who runs events. She actually sits in content and community in that division of the marketing team, and then demand gen. She handles all the logistics. So like, how's the wine getting from here to there? How like all of those things. Who are the speakers? What's the lineup? What's the experience? All those things, and then she interfaces with demand gen, and we promote the heck out of all of it and enable sales around it. So that's how we've traded off, but it's one demand team and one events team, and how we've been able to bring on contract employees to help us kind of spin that up and spin it down, right? Because events are there's the seasonality to it, right? Like not much going on this month as it relates to events in December.
Totally.
And so like being able to augment that with contract has really been beneficial for us.
Interesting. Anything else you want to add, Nick?
No, I mean, I would agree to that. It's definitely, I feel like it really varies. Like for us, like developers and engineers, like they love trade shows. Like they're all about like, and to be honest, like when I got here, we were signed up for 55 trade shows for this year alone. And so it was a crazy amount. And like, then you throw in everything else with it, but it's like you spend so much money on these things, you have to figure out like what really works. And like we have a small team. There's only 3 of us specifically in field marketing. Then we leverage a lot of like we have someone in campaigns where she helps with all of our outreach and social. We have someone in like PR and product marketing that helps with like a lot of that pieces of it. So we work very closely and really cross-functionally with everyone else within marketing to pull it all together. But at the end of the day, it's like our name on like the specific event.
Yeah. And Natasha did ask a question about industry trade shows in terms of comparison conversion from in-person ones versus virtual. I think we sort of already touched on it, but Kate and Nick, do you have anything you want to add to give color on that question?
I can go real quick. I can tell you that the rate of conversion that we've seen from virtual to in-person is way less. And it's just like, it's not even like, for us at least, a little bit way less. Like it's a big drop off from like conversion from what we've seen from our virtual events, where like, that's why from 55 for this year, I plan on only doing maybe 10 for all of next year. So it's going to be a huge, huge drop off.
Interesting.
I think for us, we'll continue down this virtual event path, which means more events for us. We'll also continue down the sponsored virtual events. I haven't heard of anybody bringing anybody remotely talking about in person yet. In terms of any of the vendors that we've looked at or the landscape as we're looking at it. So, but we'll continue, and we doubled down here. As marketers, you lost about 30% of your channels, right? When you went to an all virtual environment. So like in-person trade shows were off, like lots of the field marketing tactics were gone. ABM, all direct mail was gone. Sending anything, any physical good became 10x harder. So I think you gotta figure out, with the remaining channels that you have left, how do you make them successful, right? How do you like force fit it to be successful?
Yeah, that's very helpful. And I want to go to Joel's question really quickly. He's asking about integrations that you think would be very helpful for the virtual event experiences overall. And it looks like he's recommending Sendoso as an example, or Alice Postal. Are there any ideas for you, either from an experience perspective, and I'm also curious from like a back end, whether it's the Visibles or the HubSpots and Drifts of the world, can you see integrations that you think can enhance your virtual event workflows overall?
Yeah, I mean, so at Drift, we never, ever pre-March had a field marketer come to us and say, hey, can you help us? And all of a sudden we saw this big influx of all these field marketers coming saying like, hey, I really want to look at using Drift as part of my field marketing strategy. Why? Because everything had become virtual. So you saw Adobe Summit was actually done in the Adobe platform. And what they did was they brought Drift in to enable the conversation piece. So at Drift, we talk to marketers about like, look, you've got all these people at their point of highest intent when they're on your website and you're capturing less than 2% of them.
Yeah.
Let's make the experience more engaging for you and for the end user so that you can capture more of those people when they're at their point of highest intent. High intent when on their website, very high intent when they're attending your event and immersed in the experience that you've built. So why not enable that experience in real time as well, right? And Sue, you talked about you had seen like salespeople getting into chat rooms at different events, but like that is a way for you to be able to start a conversation. Like I feel very passionately, the role of marketing today is to start conversations and continue conversations for the sales team, not to generate MQLs, not to put acronyms within your acronyms, right? MQLs in your CRM. And so it's all about conversations. And so like that's been really interesting to help people solve those problems. You talked about PFL or Sendoso, PFL, other direct mail integrations. We're doing that right now. So we have integrations with Drift in terms, so I don't have a form on my website. We only use Drift. I think I'm one of 2 in the world. So we are capturing that information, capturing people's home addresses, passing it over into PFL to get the fulfillment taken care of and getting it out of the system, right? PFL did a great job at rolling that out very early days into the pandemic, which was great. It's super helpful for us. So we've been using that too, and that's been really helpful. I don't know, Nick, you have other stuff?
Yeah, no, honestly, so I've used Sendoso and Alice in the past, and so we don't use either one right now, but we are looking to bring one on specifically for it next year, just because we do feel like the integration is important to be able to kind of stay there and kind of power everything through. But honestly, we've used Drift for so much, and I'm not just saying that because Kate's here, but like I go back to reInvent because we're literally using Drift for everything to book meetings right there. And then we're round robbing it to our SDR team, and they're scheduling, the meetings are all booked on site. They're going through and they're having, we call them PIs, basically. It's like a personal interview. They're going through and having conversations with these prospects. And it's just like an easy way to get a good amount of meetings booked quickly and just automate that process. And I mean, we use Drift in basically a ton of our websites and just landing pages. And we're also looking to explore it for even our event side of it. We just want to, I'm very big into like making your form fills basically as minimal as possible, because I hate when you have to go and fill out 3 pages of a form to be able to register for something. And so whatever you can do to eliminate that or at least minimize that, I'm all for.
Interesting. So we still actually have a lot of questions that are left here. I'm gonna next go to Jen's question, focused on actually one of the topics we started touching on. How do you encourage SDRs and the sales team to do more with the prospects that you brought them from events, and even the content that you've generated through marketing events overall? And I think there's actually so much to unpack on this topic, and definitely where the white space seems to be. Is there anything else you want to add on that question?
For us, the number one thing, you must have an SLA, a service level agreement with sales, right? Yeah. You have to get to agreement on what it is that you both agree that you're going to follow up on, and what is the time window that you're going to follow up on it. And then you have to build a dashboard that you can report on it, right? So our dashboard has like, look, this is the percent of uncontacted people that we've surfaced to you that have not been contacted. If this is below 100%, we can do it by team, and then we can get it all the way to the individual level. So like, why have you not contacted these people?
Interesting.
And we don't think about it as MQLs. We think about it as, we call them interested people, because I think that's part of the problem. Why people don't follow up is like, oh, why didn't you follow up with this MQL? I don't know, like whatever, what do you want me to do? Instead of, I can now go to my SDR and be like, hey, how come you didn't follow up with Nick? That's a different conversation, right?
Yeah.
And so ours has the percent of contacted, it needs to be 100. Ours has the time to when you got it out. Our acceptable window is within 24 hours, and we measure that and hold each other accountable. And then we measure percent on track, meaning how many it's not good enough to just get to that first touch, right? We know on average it takes about 5 touches. So we're measuring all the way of like, how are you keeping those people up to date in the sequences to make sure that no person gets left behind, right? No conversation.
So interesting. Do you manage that dashboard in Visible too, or is that separate?
No, so that's all done in Salesforce. It's all done in Salesforce. Visible is really only about marketing attribution and the measuring the effective marketing.
And do you own the responsibility of creating reports and giving visibility, or is that something that sits in between sales or?
That's in marketing. So we are really fortunate. We had a centralized operations function, and so marketing ops and sales ops collaborate on those things.
That's awesome. It's like a dream team that's making it all work together. I think that's like where the opportunity really is. Nick, anything else you want to add there?
No, honestly, we do the same thing. It's 24-hour SLA for us, and it's something that we can all measure. But I think it's important, everyone's trying to thrive or trying to strive towards a revenue organization, but it's not just sales anymore. It's so much of a team sport that I think, it starts with the SDRs, like they're the front and center of like everything, but like sales, marketing, CS, like everyone's in that boat, and like we're all trying to row towards like the same goal, which is revenue at the end of the day, and being able to kind of help each other out where, if we're falling down somewhere, help and kind of push each other up. And so personally, like I help personalize outreaches, like I don't want to say handhold the SDR team, but I go through and I show them a lot of love and like basically give them tips and really kind of make sure that I'm providing the outreach to them so that they're effective when they're outreaching to the prospects that are out there.
That's awesome. Well, we only have a minute left, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So first of all, huge shout out to Kate and Nick. Thank you so much for joining us today. For the folks in the audience, if you are interested in joining future core community events, feel free to apply on our _ website to join the core community. And for those of you who actually enjoyed today's event experience and are looking for platforms to actually plan your upcoming events, you're welcome to join one of the breakout rooms to meet the Goldcast team in the Goldcast Help Desk breakout networking room. And actually, Nick also offered to stick around to help answer questions and brainstorm ideas about 2021 event strategy afterwards. So he'll also be in a separate room if you want to go meet Nick and chat afterwards. So feel free to join any one of those networking breakout rooms. And for everyone else, enjoy the rest of your day and happy end of 2020.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.